Someone talk to me.
Yeah, what's up?
Yo, Ellis, what's Gucci, man?
Nothing much. Just had my first lesson with Greg Fox. That
Oh,
was
yeah?
cool.
How'd that
Yeah.
go?
Very fast paced, just like throwing a lot of exercises my way.
Yeah.
And yeah, excited to do stuff with him though. That'll be fun.
Had you ever done like formal drum stuff? I know you're like a multi instrumentalist, but have you ever
Yeah,
done
no,
lessons?
not really. The only lessons I've done have been guitar for like a few years when I started back in like eighth grade.
Yeah.
And then I've been doing voice lessons
Yeah.
since like sophomore year of high school. So that's been like 4 or 5 years now.
That's pretty sick that like
Yeah.
voice is like your most by traditional standards, your most like trad instrument. I think that's really dope.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say?
Um, Let me think.
Musically.
Yeah, musically, I am setting some deadlines for myself. Just like a couple weeks ago or so, I kind of just was in a place of like, wow, I've been writing music for 3 4 years and I have nothing released to show about it. And I know like, you got to take your time with stuff and like not pressure yourself to put anything out just to like have it out.
Yeah.
Um, but I decided that I'm going to start putting stuff out in time for it to like, I don't know, for my plate to be clean by the time I leave this fall.
Uh-huh.
Just because I kind of want to like move on to other stuff and not really have
Yeah.
anything, in the past holding me back.
Yeah, I mean,
So I,
go ahead. Go ahead.
what were you saying?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was hanging out with a few friends from a band. We were just walking outside and talking, and they're just some people that I look up to a lot. They got me into the music scene here. I'm from Minneapolis, and they have always been two guys who have really like pushed me to you know do stuff and like better myself as a musician and a songwriter.
Yeah.
And they were just really very like, you got to just like do your stuff and get it out there and not worry about like who's producing it, or like who's working on it. Cause like I've heard your demos and everything and you have an idea for what you want to do. You just need to do it.
Right.
So right now I'm in the process of like setting things up so I can get it recorded and released by like pretty much everything that I have, like that I'm working on. It'll be out by the time I leave this fall. So that's kind of cool and exciting.
And how much material is that in like duration or number of compositions or whatever?
Yeah.
Like
So
how do you expect it to be?
so I have 3 songs that I've been sitting on for a while now that have been pretty much recorded. I'm just going to do some tweaking to vocals just on Melodyne or something and then mix them and release them. That should
Nice.
be out like pretty soon. I've been ever since like the beginning of this year, I've been working on some house techno stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna maybe cut a few tracks, but I'm just gonna release a short little thing on the side,
Mm-hmm.
um, just as something to put out there.
Yeah.
And then I have either 4 or 5 songs. I'm on the fence about one of them, like keeping it in there, or maybe like just scrapping it or keeping it for something else. But I have 4 to 5 songs that I'm gonna record and mix and everything with the 2 friends that I was previously talking to the other day. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, so that'll be fun. I think like, 5 months is more than enough time to get that out. And if it's not out by then, I don't think it ever will be. That's the kind of mentality I'm going by. It's just like, it's just got to be out by then.
So you're doing like
Um,
it's like three releases basically,
yeah,
or
pretty much.
three? Yeah. Three of different
Yeah.
like different things that you've basically been working on, but of different like styles or sounds or like, setups, kind of distinct setups.
Yeah.
So like
I
one
mean,
the first one is more the singer-songwriter stuff you're talking about?
yeah, so the first three songs that I'll release are for my solo project, First Electric.
Mhm.
The house techno stuff is like its own thing. I'm probably going to put it out under the name Mandon Busser because Brandon Musser is the name of my friend who's like really gotten me into house techno music, all that kind of stuff. And that'll be, just kind of like a little ode to him, I guess.
Cool.
And
Cool.
then the other songs that I'm planning on recording and getting out will be another thing for my solo project.
Nice.
So
It's
yeah.
like it's interesting though, like, and we've talked about this before, but like, splitting up projects based on sound, even splitting them
Hmm.
up by project name and making them like,
Hmm.
distinguished entities under you, the solo artist. I mean, like even First
Yep.
Electric, I mean, if even your main project has a name, you know what I mean? It's not your first name. It's not like you like, first and last name composer, and I feel like there's like distinctions that a lot of people and and artists who might have everything under one project name are then forced
Yep.
to start using their own name for other projects. Like think of
Hmm.
like One O Tricks Point Never with like his film
Yep.
scores. He's got to be like composed by Daniel Lopatin for that sort of situation.
Yes.
It's just interesting, like the context related to sound, but also like presentation. So in your case, you know, you've already established a sound under the First Electric, and you're continuing
Hmm.
on with that on that trajectory, right? But then there's
Hmm.
also, the new electronic music, calling it, in basically in tribute to the colleague of yours that got you into making that type of music.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, in and of itself, like a concept project, not even a concept
Hmm.
album, but a concept project where like
Hmm.
you could like really go, you are embodying your friend in Bizarro world. Um,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, so there's like the benefits to splitting it up that way for your own like sanity, setting up boundaries and, I
Yeah.
guess distinct limitations for each project, maybe as a
Hmm.
challenge for yourself. But
Hmm.
at the same time, like, I don't want people to think that like, oh, this ain't this is too what's the guy's name? This is too Brandon Busser to be a First Electric song. Or
Yeah.
whatever
No, I
whatever
know
his name is.
for sure. Yeah.
um
I think my kind of like, I mean, I got into the music scene here, and somebody that I've really looked up to a lot is this guy Caleb Hins. And for when he was in high school and a little bit after that, he was putting out just like bedroom folk music, just weird stuff.
mhm.
He put out like a lot of it. His albums were like 20 songs long. It was mainly just kind of like a thing for him to like really hone his production skills and everything.
Yeah.
He doesn't really advertise those a lot. But there's some really cool stuff in there. And then he went off to college, wasn't for him, came back and started this band called The Happy Children.
Mhm.
And it's all of his stuff that he does, like music and different things is under this Normal Parents umbrella. It's like, the name that everything of his kind of fits under.
Huh.
So he has The Happy Children, which is like this band of his, and then Scary Mama, which is like this weird, he's always like pitching up or down his vocals, and it's just super like weird electronic stuff. Um, and then he recently has been collaborating with two of his friends from the band Hippocampus, if anybody knows who that is. And he's calling that project Baby Boys. And yeah, it's just really, I think I really thought it was cool how he was able to kind of split up everything. And, he would always talk about when I wasn't feeling driven to do something for this one project, I would just kind of have another place to put all my energy into. So there's
Yeah.
just like always something happening. And I think that really helped me because in like the end of 2020, I was just not really doing much with my solo project. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start something else just because nothing is like happening right now with my solo project. So I just wanted to like do something. But yeah.
I think that's like to compartmentalize the different aspects of your musical voice or your voice as a technologist, as a performer, putting them in different places for the sake of not necessarily relying on one too much. For if you get burnt out on one idea, the others could excite you in different ways to motivate you when you're lacking elsewhere. I totally get that, but at the same time, that is, that's kind of a coping mechanism, like whatever you need to make you feel like you are now motivated to try something different, to take your mind off the thing that's driving you crazy, like whatever it is that gets you doing that, like that's great. And that should be the end result. But, like at the same time, you are just one, unless, if it's a collaborative project, that's one thing. But if it's just yourself, the solo artist working with different tools, like I feel like your tools should always be kind of always available for anything and nothing. You know what I mean? Like, whether you use one thing or 10 things, whether you have one specific sound on this thing and something completely different on the other, like a pop song followed by a, field recording collage or whatever like that. Like I think artists, musicians and sonic artists and music technologists and stuff, we can kind of benefit from, I don't know, I feel like taking a step back and appreciating the similarities in our voice, even if the sound or style is different, like not necessarily thinking about genre as how you would categorize your own work, but maybe more on emotion or a specific timbre or mood or space you're trying to present. It's not necessarily making like pop music versus like instrumental house music, but now it's like making like, uplifting like energy music versus lethargic music. I don't know, like there's just so many ways, for sure. There's so many ways to compartmentalize it beyond just projects, because the thing that I'm saying is just like from a marketing or a music business, I don't know, however you want to describe it, like public presentation perspective, when we're all like hustling and like working and like, I don't know, to me it's like I have enough trouble like managing things under one project name, if I'm releasing it to the public. It's another idea if I'm like compartmentalizing and having my own process of dividing different ideas up in the studio privately, but it's another thing to be like, this is this project, listener, and over here you have this entirely different project. I don't know. It's again, if you're looking for like a benefit of a workflow, a working writer's block sort of solution, it sounds like you're right on the money with that. As is your colleague that you were talking about, but just the idea that you have to make those divisions clear to your audience, like as far as project titles and things like that. I don't know. I mean, I could see the pros and the cons either way, because,
for sure.
On the one hand, if you're trying to get booked for like a specific type of show that's like hard, or I don't know, like way more like one sound, You know, like
Mm-hmm.
if you were trying to get booked after releasing your techno recording under what's his name?
Mm-hmm.
If you were trying
Mandan
to
Busser.
what is it?
Mandan Busser?
Mandan
Brandon
Busser.
Musser, but
Right,
like,
right, right.
yeah,
Mandan Busser. Mandan.
yeah.
It should be Mandan Brusser.
I
That make
know, but it just rolled off the tongue better.
ugh, then it just reminds me of Bussy. That's just me. That's me and
Yeah,
my deep fried brain. What I was
yeah.
saying though is like if you're trying to get booked at like a hard techno club or
Mm-hmm.
online radio station that's like super, you know, in one lane aesthetically, genre,
Yeah,
stylistically, whatever. I could see the con of having it all under your name or one project name where it's like you have to be sure to send them the album or the collection that you want them to hear and not
yeah,
like no, that's my pop stuff. That's not what I would plan on
yeah,
be doing at your place at this thing because this
yeah.
is the techno thing. I could see that as being
Mm-hmm.
a you know, in the opposite direction, like a marketing flaw, or you know,
Mm-hmm.
a hiccup that would just be another thing
Yep.
to deal with. So I don't know. I mean, I think both are kind of like both of them from the like public persona perspective, and this is all just coming from really thinking about it analytically, like because some people just who fucking cares, just do what you want, you
Yeah,
know, and
absolutely.
that should be the first and foremost the thing your gut for doing this because the stakes are low. You want to just get this shit out there as a
Yeah,
therapeutic practice, you know, like
yeah.
this is you have a goal that's very personal and fuck anybody else, I guess, for what they make of it or what they want to categorize it as. But you know, this is a music education conversation. You know, these are the
Yeah,
things that we can be over analytical about as far as like how we compartmentalize the projects at home privately versus publicly. You
yeah.
know, some shit we just don't think about unless we're talking about it. You
Mm-hmm.
know. But it
For
sounds
sure.
like you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah,
At least partially. I mean, some of the stuff I know you're like done with, and now it's in like fully like mixing, mastering phases.
yep.
Um, but again, separate from all that, like remember to take ear breaks from your projects.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
like especially in between them. Like I wouldn't even necessarily say like I would stay away from trying to like even like it's like method acting. Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
like fully in this like mixing zone for the First Electric EP or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like keep your biases towards that and less so towards like your other projects if you're like dedicating
Yeah.
like a week of mixing or whatever. I don't know, not to be you know, dictatorial in saying like
Yeah.
this is not allowed to be heard while
Mm-hmm.
working on this, you know, but I tend to just do the project and then and just silence, like don't have anything don't listen to anything else or do anything else
Yep.
if I have shit to do later and need to go back to it and I'm like on break, you know.
Yep.
Because like day to day, like switching off from one day to another, that's one thing. But like trying to like cram, not that you're really on a tight schedule or anything, but you
Yeah.
know, just as a recording or ear practice, our biases are so real and I don't know, like if I've been like in like a techno mood and
Mm-hmm.
then I like listen or like want to like mix some like completely sound collaged, more abstract, less energy sort of uh, piece of audio or recording project or whatever. It's like a different mindset. It's like a different part of my brain has to be
Yeah.
accessed in one sitting, and it's like
For sure.
you can only do so much. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we got to cut ourselves a little slack. So just don't push yourself.
Yeah.
Take it
For
easy.
sure.
Remember, time is money. And in your case, it's like, imagine you're your own studio executive and your own artist. So you're kind of like paying yourself in output, but at the same time, you're putting in work to do it. So that's like, labor. So, don't wage abuse yourself.
Yeah.
Like be realistic with what you could do without feeling like you're overdoing it in one day. And that includes just like mixing, because like that's so
For sure.
fucking I really don't enjoy the 12-hour mixing day, like especially, I mean, you're doing it by yourself, but like with bands, it's like, everybody together in the room. Very tedious process. I mean, you should always be having other people and getting input from other people, but like those really long sort of sittings are no bueno. I think we are trained to just like remain in the studio, even if it's like, oh, we're on break, like we're eating. Oh, we're on break, we're smoking weed or drinking. We're like not fully engaged, but we're still working. You know what I mean? That's kind of just like, feel like you're like checking out of the process. Like go drink, go smoke, and then like come back to it later. Like take a fucking break. Like you'll feel better and the music will be better. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Okay, Ellis. You hear me,
all
guy?
Right. I hear you.
You hear me loud and clear? Good. That's all I got to say on the matter. I appreciate you letting us in on your on what's going on in your practice, and I know I got good feeling about your other application. So everybody keep their fingers crossed for Mr. Ellis as he embarks into higher education to continue his quest of being a weirdo, partially shaped by yours truly. I'm molding.
Of course.
I'm that scary leftist cultural Marxist that's influencing your kids. That's it. I'm the one Jordan Peterson's been talking about, bro. That's me. Good. Thank you, Ellis.
Yeah. Okay. Peace out.
Peace. Anyone else want to chat? Anyone else trying to get in some knowledge?
Yeah.
Yo.
Maybe.
Willie.
Yes.
Big Willie style. I don't think I've ever heard your voice.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't talk a lot in my videos or anything that I post on Instagram.
That's right. It's mostly a piezo-fied field recording heavy, machinery heavy wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Or it's like harsh noise videos.
True.
That I make.
Yeah, memed out. Or it's balaclava, McDonald's balaclava imagery.
That is probably one of the greatest articles of clothing I own, and there are people who have asked me about it, and they're like, is that real McDonald's merch? And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's the McDonald's in Belfast, Ireland.
Yeah, McDonald's Belfast. Like, go figure. Like, McDonald's McIRA. Like,
it's McIRA. Oh my God. No, it's for the you're from the future, and it's when Ann Capistan has taken over our system of government, and McDonald's is the fighting militia versus the Amazon militia.
Yeah, I'm the McDonald's secret police.
You're on the McDonald's. The sweep team. You don't want anyone to know who you are. You mask up.
Exactly.
You got to mask up because you're just another guy in the neighborhood. Otherwise, this is a good dystopian nightmare we're painting for ourselves. And Pedro is just saying Ann Capistan. That's good. Yeah, that's I think there are some people in Brazil that want that too, Pedro. So I think it's a Latin American fully Americanized, full American and Capistan. It's going to be Latin America all over. Can't wait. Can't wait. Bring it on, Jeff Bezos. What's going on with you, Will? What's
Well, I'm moving on Friday.
Oh yeah,
And
that's
I'm
right. I just saw your
packing
message.
stuff. Yeah, I'm packing stuff, and I realized before I moved that I had all this noise hardware lying around that I was doing nothing with. And the reason I wasn't doing anything with it is, one, I'm kind of lazy. Like,
Yeah.
I'll admit, I'm kind of lazy. Like, I just, if it requires, well, ever since I learned how to work Ableton Live a bit,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden hardware is just like, I'm like, wait, you mean I can't just turn a knob and then it'll make this knob keep turning
Yeah.
the way I want it to?
Once you're in the box after being so out of the box, or like several boxes, if you will.
Yeah.
It becomes. I get that feeling. That was like me coming back to MIDI after, literally 10 years or whatever the fuck. Like, it can be gratifying coming back after you have such a different perspective, right?
Yeah. And so I'm like, I sold a bunch of my hardware gear, and I'm still like selling it off. And, I talk to people and they're like, oh, I wish I had this thing. And I'm like, well, I have a thing that's kind of like that. You want it? Like, here, have this multi 6 oscillator drone box made by Michael Rucci. Like, I'm not using this.
Love it.
So it's like, it's kind of me like fire sale prices on gear that's really good to people that I know.
Yeah.
Or people that I know need it. And like, then I realized, I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do now? Like, where are my sounds going to come from? And I'm like, oh, I can sample stuff because I have more recording equipment than most people I know.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm like thinking of things to sample. Like, I have a light microphone.
Mm-hmm.
This is confusing. It uses variations in the intensity of light to generate a wave using a photosensor.
Oh, that's sick. So it's not even, it's a sensor, but it's not only a microphone, or a quote unquote microphone sensor, but it's a signal generator.
Yeah. And like, so if you go outside, and I did this the other day, cause I bought a piece of sheet metal that was 36 by 36 inches. Right. And I thought, 36 inches is not that big. And I go to Home Depot, and then there's 3 foot. And I'm like, wait, never mind. I was, doing things while doing other things, and that's what happened. But so I have this piece of sheet metal, and the sun was shining on it. It was a nice day, and I set my light mic in front of it. And when you do that, you hear the sunlight, which is a white noise hiss. And then I can hear like the wind, because it was a little breezy.
Yeah.
But you can hear air turbulence with this thing, and you can hear bugs flying around. Like, periodically you hear this little, and that's like a little bug that flies past the sensor. But like, I have that, and I have other esoteric sound collection devices. So I'm thinking, like, okay, so now I have to focus on sampling, but generating my own sounds. That's
right.
me. That's my thing. Cause I don't want to like have to deal with, attribution. And if I sample something and then later it's found out that I sampled someone else's work or something, it's like, that can be a problem. So
it's becoming
or
more
if it's,
of one now.
DCM, Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Exactly.
They said, when they did that, they said, fuck everyone who uses samples.
Yep.
But, so I guess my problem is I'm trying to come up with strategies for organizing my samples.
Yeah. I mean,
because organization is not my strong suit.
It's interesting because to me, I don't know. I think that depending on the project you're working on, it's like even the idea of like not even using like esoteric recording devices, but just like standard field recording or contact mic related piezo recordings. The idea of like sampling versus field recording for the sake of like recycling becomes like this, it's all to me under this like concrete sort of mindset where you're no longer allowed to use quote unquote instruments or
Right.
in the traditional sense, and you're not allowed to use anything pre-recorded by someone else. But to me, it's like I find myself like differentiating in terminology between like field recording practice and like sampling, because like to me, like even like sampling, putting that in like a conversation of like Foley, you know what I mean? I don't know. There's just so many different approaches to it, and whether you're doing it for artistic purposes, creative purposes, or strictly like, you know, ecological documentation, you know, there's like a different, it's a completely different approach than, I would say, synthesis, you know, or
that makes sense.
Signal generation from the artificial side of things, or even like researching or using presets of something else, you know, or pre-made samples, you know, of a drum machine, someone else's drum machine settings. You know, it's like, it kind of becomes like, what are you recording and what are you planning on doing with it? Because like, if you're in Ableton, you could do literally everything, like you said. So it's like organizing sounds. If organizing is your issue at this point, with the new goal of just recording everything for the sake of creating everything, right? Maybe starting to think about like putting them into, again, compartmentalizing, like I just said with Ellis, like thinking about like, are these going to be instrumental sounds or are these like document sounds, you know?
I see.
You know what I'm saying? Because like, because like take Burial, for example, someone that uses both field recordings and has made their drums entirely through their own concrete sort of approach.
Burial,
sometimes using YouTube as an archive, but again, turning it into musical instruments. But a big thing that he would do, like he'll have like rain, as far as field recordings go, he'll have like the rain and like the city and the murky London sort of sound. But then like his drums, those are like lighters, you know, like he'll do like, here's my lighters, like, you know, like that's click. He'll get that and that'll be it. That's like a classic hi-hat for Burial.
So like,
you know, so
timbral.
It's like dividing them up into the idea of whether it be something that's meant to be played in full as like a, I don't know, ambient noise.
I follow.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's like an easy way, at least, to think of it into two categories, because one day you could be.
I work in loops.
Say it again.
I work in loops. I said I work in loops a lot. Like my latest tape that came out is like the first side is all just loops.
Yeah.
And so, but when I'm looping stuff, I have this like thing. I'm like, okay, this is, you know, I'm like listening back to field recording, for example, you know, and the one I'm listening to, for example, I made by sticking a contact mic on the said piece of sheet metal and leaving it outside for the snow to hit. And I'm recording this, and like what was really cool is I ran the contact mic through a high gain preamp, like 25 decibels of gain. So what happened is it inadvertently turned like sheet metal into like a big pickup surface. So you can hear this truck running, which was you know, a little ways down the street. You can hear the truck running, and then someone drops something. You hear this metallic clang, and someone goes "fuck," and I was like, someone dropped something, like. But that was like, that's something that I like was listening to the recording. I was like, wow, this is cool. But I was like, well, how many times can I listen to this over and over again before it gets boring?
Right.
So then I'm like, okay, so I need a longer sample here, or a longer loop, or just a one shot that's long. So it's like long form versus short form versus loops, maybe. In my terminology.
I mean, those are great ways to think about it too, especially because you already know that you like to work in loops, you know? You have you know your aesthetic better than everyone else, right? You know, better than anyone else. In the sense that like when you go out for a field recording session, or you go outside, like you're being very deliberate in your choices with like the sheet metal and like turning it up 25 dB, and now all of a sudden it's just like you said, like giant vibrational plate that could pick up, you know, sounds from a block away.
Yeah.
In that sense, like, you know, you're being very deliberate in what you're trying to get out of it, because you also know that it's not going to be like calming in the traditional noise machine waves field recording sense, in the layman's terms, right?
It's not going to be like nature.
It's not. It's a little bit different. It's a little more of a, you know, almost like the Rita approaches harsh noise wall, you know, like maximalism of nature to the point in which it's become this artificial piece of technology, right? Like an artifact. So that's just, you know, that's an aesthetic thing more than a technical thing, because it's all coming from the same sort of tools. It's just how you approach the tools based on what you're trying to do, and you're being deliberate ahead of time going into it, I think is really important, you know, because like, it's like the difference between walking around with a field recorder. This is what I've told my students too, because we were just doing like a field record on your phone acoustic ecology homework assignment for the college students, and like I was saying, like there's a big difference between like walking around with a field recorder and walking around with a field recorder in one hand and a stick in the other hand. You know, because with the stick now it's like encouraging you to create impact and to record that impact, and like so much more often than not when I do that myself, it's like, oh, that's going to be like a drum sample, you know?
Right.
Like that is going to be chopped, you know?
Right.
Versus, you know, setting up the tripod in front of a rainstorm and just letting it rock for 10 minutes. Like, I think that's my intention going into it, is a lot more just like document the scene.
Okay.
But again, like we have our own aesthetic coming into it on choices on what we're going to do, you know, but I think from your perspective of having trouble like organizing it, you could at least organize it into like, at the very least, like untouchable and choppable, you know?
Okay, that makes sense.
You know, because like on the one hand, you want some things to be, or, you know, put them into, you know, duplicate it, put it in both if you think you want to try both, you know?
Right. Because
copy and paste, it's Ableton, you know?
Yeah. Ableton, I remember when I first encountered Ableton, my friend was showing it to me, and I was like, dude, this is just a giant sampler. Yeah. Like, it's the world's largest sampler. Like, it's a sampler. Like,
you can do anything. You can do anything with a laptop and an interface, you know, but that's you know that. It's just again, intentionality, right? I mean, like you can be an improviser about it too, but I mean, like, I think the setting some rules for yourself for like a recording session or a field recording adventure, or allowing yourself to break the rules too, but still still having some goals going into the process. And I mean, you're already doing that. I mean, like, it's not like you bought the sheet metal, you know, like you had some idea in mind going into that right there, you know? So it's really just about, I've always just preached like intent as just as important as technique itself. So yeah, I think, just think about intention of the sound, and then going back and listening to it, do a little compartmentalization about how you're going to archive it, you know?
Okay.
So I'm sure you already have quite the digital library of your own field recordings.
I do. It's and it's like I have Like, I think it's like 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and now 2021.
Yeah,
Like,
nice.
on an external drive. And I just, like, year, month, day, and then what it was in a folder, and then, the files right off the recorder.
Imagine
And
like
I just, like,
imagine like the field recording convention, and like everyone is just flexing on like how many externals they've filled up, with
oh,
wave
God.
files. It's like you guys
Oh, so something I
terabytes.
wanted to mention to you that I just remembered when you said that was, have you heard of Bernie Krause?
Sounds Bernie Krause sounds super familiar.
Okay. He's a kind of sort of known nature recordist, field recordist person.
Uh-huh.
And I have a book of his, and I was like 50-50 on mentioning this book to you, but it's called here we go. Wild Soundscapes.
Yes. I remember.
You've heard
I
of
just
this one?
remember. I remember he was in "I Dream of Wires," the synthesizer documentary on Modular.
Yeah.
As one of the old heads in that. But yes, he's featured in the Soundscape Society or whatever, right? That R. Murray Schafer started, right?
Yes.
Right. That's awesome.
So, the book Wild Soundscapes, just if you ever get around to it, that's a good one. I think that'd be a good one for that I would recommend.
Awesome.
For just because I read it and it was very inspiring, and I kind of changed my thoughts on how I approach field recording, because I've done a bunch of different techniques and used bunch of different types of mics, and it's like finding what sounds good to you.
Beautiful.
And gives you the best results is the thing that works the best.
It's interesting because everybody I would always recommend the Soundscape, the Schafer book as the starting spot, the starting point, just on the concept of acoustic or sonic ecology. But this sounds really cool because it's taking it a step further as the field recording composer. I like this. I'm seeing it now. Damn, it's so cheap on Amazon. It's friggin' $6.
Yeah.
It's friggin' $6 paperback. I'm doing this today.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. There's only 3 left in stock on Amazon. Yo, let's fucking Lamimi on Patreon. Fucking sell this shit out. This is dope. Thank you for letting me know about that, because there's so many.
Oh, you're welcome.
I am by no means a acoustic ecologist. That's a science major for the most part. Obviously there are so many composers in that world, but it's a true dedication beyond music that I haven't ever separated myself enough to do it. Because it is it's environmentalism. It's an environmental science, right? Did you hear about the global quieting? Did you hear about that related to COVID?
I've heard of this.
This is spooky shit. It's the I can find an article about it, but it's basically that because of COVID, there's just been less noise on the planet. Global quieting of high frequency seismic noise due to COVID pandemic lockdown measures. I'm putting this in the chat right now because this is a science mag, what's it called? Journal, scholarly journal essay. So it's very sciencey. But I was looking at it when it came out, because it came out in September. I was looking at it in the fall or whatever, and it's just saying the noise floor of the earth has decreased because of lockdown measures, and because of that, there has been a return in many cases of a louder noise floor in the natural acoustic ecologies, you know, animals returning or whatever. It's fascinating.
I noticed that, especially like last March, especially towards the end of last March. I noticed that because where I live is very close to the interstate.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
like 95, like I-95 goes right past my town,
Yeah.
and you can always hear traffic noise.
Yeah.
Like growing up, I know that traffic noise sound, and it always was there. So I
Totally.
walked outside one night to smoke a cigarette, and I was like smoking a cigarette, and I was like, wait a minute, something's
It's quiet.
different.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it hit me. I was like, it's quiet. It's like people aren't out. And that was a weird moment. I was like,
bizarre.
oh, it's like something's weird. It's like, oh no, it's quiet. That's what's going on. It's like, because
Yeah.
whenever I'm away from the traffic noise, my stress level drops. So, like,
It's fascinating. I was literally just thinking about this because I grew up not, I mean, I live very close to I-95 as well. It does drive right through my Boston suburb growing up.
yeah,
But I was like 100 yards away from the local highway. And that would always be, especially like in like listening to it when I was like getting stoned when I was 15 or whatever, like in my parents' backyard at night when there's like nothing else you can hear, there's always the roar of the highway, because even at midnight in, you know, like greater Boston, there is still going to be industry happening, you know? So like in that case, like I haven't been back to my parents' house, since COVID started. But I'd be curious because I was just engaging with that sort of thinking, listening to the highway by my house here in Puerto Rico and thinking like, damn, like I've always literally lived next to a highway. Like it's just like, I've always had this noise pollution, in my sort of like very, very like peripheral hearing, which is fascinating because it's like, and I'm sure you know it too. Like where are you in Virginia?
yeah, Virginia.
Virginia. I mean, like, you know, but you're not in the hills. You're in
No,
the city.
I'm between DC and Richmond, like
Gotcha.
almost.
Yeah. So suburbia, urban sort of. I mean, you're off I-95,
Yeah.
so you're off I-95. It can't be that out
Yeah.
in the boonies. But
I'm at the southern edge of Northern Virginia, is the way I explain it to people.
gotcha.
Like there's a river. No, and
Right.
if you go across the river, if you cross the river into Stafford County,
Yeah.
that becomes Northern Virginia because they require emissions testing. In Fredericksburg and everywhere south of Fredericksburg, they don't require emissions testing. Virginia's
Gotcha.
a weird state.
Yeah. It's interesting because, yeah, like just like Professor Bleep Bloop just said in the chat, it's all about living in that middle of nowhere sound. Because for people like us who have grown up and have lived our entire lives in urban and suburban environments, when we do get that vacation or whatever, that trip to wherever in the middle of nowhere, when we do go out to the sticks for whatever reason, there is like that immediate jolt. I always feel it when I visit my grandfather in Cape Cod, you know, way out there, kind of like beachside. But even in the summer, it's a pretty rural and empty area, isolated area. And out at night, it's just like, God damn. You know, in Puerto Rico here, there are obviously places to go where you can have the coqui frogs and that real natural, you know, horticulture and animal soundscape that's very that's indigenous to here, but not in my backyard, unfortunately.
Right.
I have
And that's
a
like,
highway 50 yards away.
it's just like, and traffic noise. I remember one day I got really like pissed off because I was like, I don't know what it was, but I was like, okay, this traffic noise in these field recordings I just made is driving me nuts. I want to like look at it.
Yeah.
So I opened up Audacity and I opened up the spectrograph
Oh yeah.
and I like just looked at the traffic noise in the picture, and I realized that it has low frequency components, mid-range components, and high frequency components. And they're like they're spaced out. So if you were to, like, you know, if you take a recording of traffic noise and boost it enough, it does become kind of a white noise sound, but it's not exactly white noise. It's just this drone, if you will, but there's a low frequency, mid-range, and high frequency components, and they're spread across the spectrum in such a manner that it basically blankets everything.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I know what you're saying. Like, it is, it's not necessarily white noise, but like distance or like proximity is such a huge component when, like, recording and like interpreting that sort of just blanket of industrial noise or cars or whatever.
It's just like, it's like
exactly. But like you said, like when you analyze it through a spectrogram or whatever, and you're thinking about it in relation to something that's entirely artificial and also literally every frequency audible, which is, you know, white noise. In this case, it's kind of like, I mean, there are other colors, you know, there's like pink noise, there's brown noise, you know, there's black noise, there's different things like that. I'm sure that there is a closer color that traffic, that exact traffic timbre we're talking about is closer to, you know. I'd be curious.
So on that note, in the Bernie Krause book, he talks about in the 80s, he was in California at this pond recording frog calls.
Nice.
And he said that it was a full moon night, and when frogs call and they all get into a chorus, they're actually in a synchronization pattern where if a predator walks in, the predator can't tell where the sound is coming from.
Yeah.
And so
it's like fucking in the video game where they have like they
you
duplicate themselves and there's only one real one, but they're everywhere.
Yeah, that's the way
it's
they
fucking
do it.
Agent Smith, Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah. And
Lachlan says Naruto moment.
Exactly. Like, so, but then he's recording this and a jet flies over, like a fighter jet, military aircraft flies over. And he said that it was low and really loud and it made all the frogs go quiet. So he said, but it was 45 minutes before the frogs got back into their synchronization with their calls. And in that time, it was a full moon night. He saw 2 foxes and a great horned owl at the edge of the pond eating frogs. And it was like,
it's the only time they could get in, and they felt like they knew how to find their prey.
Yeah, because they were all out of sync. And I'm like, so around here we have spring peepers. And I remember one time a couple years ago, I found a spot where I could go I could get close to where the peepers were and also not be technically trespassing anywhere.
Yeah.
And I went out there, and I'm out there, and it's near some railroad tracks near the Fredericksburg battlefield or whatever. And because we had all the Civil War shit happen here. And, but I'm out there and a freight train goes past. It was kind of wild because I'm just like standing there, and I heard the whistle. I'm like, okay, whatever. Headphones on, mics out. And then the train goes past, and I realized how high I had my gain up.
Right.
When the train came past, because it entered right into the mic field, and then the horn blew. And I was like, yeah. But the train went past, and then I remember I've been listening to the peepers, and the peepers just make this wall of peeps. It's like you can't really hear where they're coming from, but you just hear it. The train went past, and then I heard this it started, but it took a while to get back to where it had been before the train went through.
Yeah.
And it was just, I read that in the book, and I was like, wow, the human disruption on natural sounds. I could go on about that for a long time, though.
I love that shit, though, because it's obviously sound is in the natural world used as a defense, or in many cases an invitation. It's like, yo, let's fuck. You know, that's oftentimes what the animals are saying when you hear them. But it's fascinating when in the defense term, because like here in Puerto Rico, like with the coqui, like it does have, they project so well and they're so tiny that there might only be like 3 in a bush, but they got the whole block covered. Because like before I lived in the suburbs, before I lived in the suburbs, I lived in the crappy little apartment right off the highway in San Juan, and there was literally only like 1 tree on the entire block, otherwise just residential, and there was like a hospital parking lot. And I shit you not, like the frogs descended on this one bush every night that managed to project this omnipresent 3D audio mirage or illusion, if you will, that is just there's something about certain animals congregating and the sounds that they make to mask each other as sort of like, you know, like, and perhaps it is with the frogs too here, like some sort of defense mechanism to mask each other from predators. In this case, probably larger bugs, because these frogs are tiny.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, no, it's fascinating hearing that, especially with the with Bernie Krause's noticing predators literally like creeping in after the plane flies through. It's just like, boom, there's the proof right there. You know, sound. I wonder if these animals are tuned to 432 though. That's the question.
I don't know, but the other thing I've noticed is if I'm like out in the woods and it's like evening in the woods in the south, you know, you got the katydids and the other bugs and stuff, and like everything has a range that it stays in. All the different bug species, all the different birds, they all have ranges that they stay in. And when they call, they don't overlap their ranges with each other. Or if they do, it's like, you know, kind of, you can still tell. And it's wild to me that it's like nature evolved to this and we're just now noticing it because we have spectrograms.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like every natural being in the world is like incapable. Every organic being in the world is like incapable of producing like the same waveform with their voice or with a tap. Like it's just never going to be exactly the same.
It's never going to be the exact.
It's going to be like it's something that like could become a meditation process. Like I know like Giacinto Scelsi, the composer, like would make all of his instrumentalists working with him do that process without a spectrograph, but like focus on one note and play it play it like exactly the same over and over and over again until you believe you're really repeating it, you know? And no one's ever perfect. And I think that's kind of the point, is that it is like a Sisyphus workshop, you know, like it's just a never ending, endless battle, with no end in sight, but it's kind of like related to, what you were saying, like the nuance of the natural world, our natural sound world, even with synthetics, not just organic thing, or I mean, not just analog synthesizers sounding fucking, you know, warbly and not necessarily 440 or whatever, but like digital, like is it looking at a spectrograph of a digital sine wave? Like if you're gonna zoom in. You're going to zoom in far enough, you're going to see minute variation, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's just, there's
it's all different.
Exactly. There's just no way.
It's all different.
But anyways, I think I have to end this because I have to run for some work meeting thing. Because I have the things. I just wanted to do this shit because like these conversations give me fucking life, and I don't have to censor myself here.
Well, that's good. I'm glad.
I appreciate you calling in, Mr. Noise Ordnance, Senor Will from
you.
Virginia. Thank you for calling in.
I appreciate you having me here.
Good luck with the move.